Hilchos Geirushin Perek Achad Asar, the laws of divorce, chapter 11. Today, the main discussion is actually not going to be so much about divorce, as much as it's going to be about a principle called miyun. Miyun means refusal, and it's the mechanism of how a girl underage, a minor girl, gets out of a marriage. We're going to see that she gets out of a marriage not through divorce, but simply by going to court and saying, I refuse to stay married to this man. Now, as a result of that, the Rambam is going to get into two other discussions. Number one, the famous prohibition of remarrying a divorcee once she marries somebody else. So if you divorce your wife, she goes to somebody else, she cannot come back to you. And second is a enactment made by the sages that after divorce, a woman should never get married. Truth is, after any marriage dissolves, a woman should never get remarried till she waits 90 days, 3 months, because that's the time it takes for pregnancy to become apparent. And because in Judaism, understanding the parental relationship is super important, it dictates lineage issues, it dictates a lot of other issues relating to Judaism, so we have to know who's the father of each child, so we wait 90 days. Okay? And then that's all going to be in the context of this concept of miyun, of a minor girl refusing her marriage. So the Rambam begins by saying a general caveat. Halacha Aleph, ein noisin esaktana. Ideally, one should not marry a minor girl. Although it's within the jurisdiction, according to Torah law, a father can marry off his minor daughter. Technically, you could go through with a marriage to a minor, but we don't. Okay, that's like the starting point, is we don't. Everything else is going to be if he did. But if somebody ended up marrying a minor girl who was an orphan, in other words, her father hadn't married her off, she was simply married off by her family to take care of her, and it turns out later that she doesn't desire to be with the husband, all she needs to do is simply declare refusal and go. There's no need for a divorce document. This marriage doesn't dissolve in the typical way.
There's no time limit.
Huh? No time limit until she reaches majority.
Oh, okay.
So long as she's a minor, she can do that. She'ein kiddushin shel ketana, kiddushin gemurin k'meisha b'yarnu, because as we explained, the consecration act that takes place with a minor girl isn't really a full consecration. V'chein ketana she'isi avia. Similarly, if a minor girl was married off first by her father, v'nis almana in yizgarsha k'shei ketana, and that marriage dissolved, either because the husband died and she was a widow, or because the husband divorced her while she was still a minor, at this point, having left her father's jurisdiction, she's like a live orphan. And if she were to get married while she is a minor, she can refuse the marriage and go. Now, implied in this halacha is that if the marriage came about because the father married her off, not because she was an orphan or she was a live orphan, the original marriage where the father marries her off, it's not so simple to do miyun out of that marriage, because that's a really full binding marriage based on the Torah law that the father has the right to marry off his daughter. But definitely when it comes to a minor girl in her own jurisdiction, either because her father died or because her father figuratively died, in other words, she was in a marriage and then left that marriage, she can definitely have the mechanism of miyun to get out of her future marriages. Halacha beis, hachereshes, a deaf-mute woman, even though the strength, the validity of her marriage is only rabbinic, like the marriage of a minor, the sages didn't allow her to leave a marriage with refusal, so people shouldn't stop themselves from marrying her. See, with a minor girl, there's a time limit. As soon as she turns a major, she can no longer refuse the marriage and leave. But if we're going to allow a deaf-mute woman to refuse a marriage and leave, that has no time limit. It's forever. It's not going to be so attractive, and people will not take her. So the sages who wanted to get her married figure, you know what, we'll let her get married like a minor girl, but we won't let her get out like a minor girl. Halacha gimel mimaenes yaktana bein mina eris and bein mina nisuin. The minor girl has the right to refuse the marriage, whether they're only in a state of consecration or even if they've already consummated the marriage. Bein bifnei baila bein shalei bifanav, whether in the presence of her husband or not in his presence. The same way she can declare refusal against a full-fledged husband, she can also declare refusal against a yavam. A yavam is a case where she was married to somebody else, the guy died childless, and now the brother wants to marry her. Before she even gets into that marriage, she can say, I don't want it. Or even after they get into the marriage, she can say, I don't want it, and refuse and get out. So long as she's a minor, there's no limit to how many husbands she can refuse. She can refuse one husband, and then a second husband, and if she gets married to someone else, or a third husband, even many times, so long as she's in a state of minority, she has the right to do miyun, to the refusal. Not only does a minor have to actually express her refusal, sometimes actions can express her refusal. If you have a minor girl who's in a marriage, she did not declare refusal, even if she's actually married, and in the middle of the marriage she goes and accepts consecration from another man, the very consecration becomes the refusal from the first husband. The fact that she allowed herself to be consecrated by another man shows that she's done with the first guy. Until when does the woman have the right to declare refusal out of her marriages? So long as she is in the state of minor. And this is a chart that we had a couple of times already. We see that a girl at 0, as soon as she's born, she's called a katana, a minor. Typically at 12 years old, she shows the first signs of physical puberty. And then she becomes called a na'ara, a young girl. And that period lasts for 6 months. At 12 and a half, she becomes a bogeret, a full major. So the Rambam says, so long as she's in the state of katana, ad shatiya nara, till she becomes a nara, again, the first physical signs, oy ad sheyivada shehi ailenis, or it turns out that she is a barren woman. This is a woman who doesn't show physical signs of maturity at around 20 years old, or sometimes even you have to wait till 35. At that point, it becomes clear that she's a barren woman, and she can no longer exercise her right of refusal. When do we say that a woman can exercise her right of refusal till she shows signs of maturity? This is provided that she never had relations after hitting the age of 12. But if she reached the age of 12 when she had relations with her current husband, since technically just the act of relations is an act of consecration, biblically, wow. Mashiv haruach u'morid hageshem, huh? Harezu eina mima'enes, she can no longer declare her refusal. Ve'eina tzricha bedika lemiyun. A woman at this point doesn't even need to be checked physically to see if she has the signs in order to see if she can do refusal. Shecheskasa shehivia siman, and a girl at age 12 is presumed to have shown signs of physical maturity, and therefore if she had relations, it's a no-go for refusal. What if we actually checked her and it's found that she has no signs of physical maturity? And since she had relations nevertheless, after a time when she was supposed to have shown signs, we have to worry that perhaps she showed physical signs, like some pubic hairs had grown and they fell off. And therefore she loses the right to refusal out of doubt. And if she wants to end the marriage, she has to get a divorce out of doubt. So much so that if she goes ahead and does the refusal, after she was checked and didn't show signs, and then accepted consecration money from somebody else, she needs to get a divorce from that guy as well, out of doubt, because we're not sure if she ended the first marriage and the second marriage is valid, or the first marriage never ended by virtue of the refusal and the second marriage is invalid. Says if she goes ahead and actually gets married, not just Kiddushin, Teitze Mizeh Mizeh, we force her out of both marriages. The Havlad, Sfeik, Mamzer, Mishneh, and any children born will be doubtful, illegitimate children. Because again, after reaching 12 years old and having relations, even if you cannot show physical signs, we have to worry that there were, and therefore the marriage would have to end through a divorce, not simply through refusal. Halacha Vav, Ketana Shalei Miyana V'Higdila. A minor girl was in a marriage, she never refused, and she becomes a major. V'aval Pi Shalei Ba'ala Bala. Even though she never had relations after becoming 12 years old, her physical majority stops her now from refusing forevermore. And she requires a divorce rabbinically. In other words, if she wants to leave the marriage, she'll have to get a divorce, but that requirement will only be rabbinic. Because he never had relations with her after reaching the basic beginning of puberty, to to the point that we should be suspicious. Perhaps she has shown physical signs, and that would put her in a doubtful state of marriage. He never actually had relations with her after becoming a major, which would convert her into being a fully married woman. She's kind of like in limbo. She's not a minor, but she never did anything to make her marriage fully valid. So the only requirement of divorce is to get her out of the marriage that was arranged when she was a minor, which to begin with was only a rabbinic marriage. Yet, since she reached majority, we're requiring her to get a divorce. That's a rabbinic requirement. Lefichach, therefore, if we can picture this case, the woman was a child when she got married. She never refused. Now she's 12 and a half, and she's fully major, but they never had any more relations after she hit the age of 12. So she's still only married on the basis of the minor marriage. If somebody else consecrates her after she reaches this age of majority, we have to accept all the stringencies. The second guy's consecration takes hold because she's only married to the first guy rabbinically. If the first guy divorces her, the second guy can marry her. But if the second person gives her a divorce, now he also messes up the first guy. The first guy can no longer hold on to her. Because it will look like, people might say, here's a man remarrying his divorcee after she already got consecrated to somebody else. Looks like it. Of course not, because the second guy just divorced her and she just reverts back to being married to the first guy. But it looks like he's remarrying her. More so, if the second guy not only consecrates her, but actually has relations with her before the first guy divorces her, she must leave both marriages. It's very similar to a case we had yesterday. A woman who hears that her husband died, she gets married to somebody else, and then the old husband shows up. Similar concept here. She was married to the one guy as a minor. She left him as though he died, married a second guy, and now the first husband is coming back into the picture, so to speak. So we got to divorce them both. However, if there will be any children from the second husband, he will not be illegitimate because he has a biblical binding marriage. The first guy only has a rabbinically binding marriage. But if the first guy has relations with her again, then he will create a mamzer, because the second marriage was fully biblically valid, and to have relations with a fully biblically married woman is adultery, and that would create a mamzer. So while she began her life married to the first guy, in the end, he's the one who can end up causing more problems for her in the end. Halacha Zayin. What is the exact age of a minor girl who requires refusal? Mibas sheish ad bas eser shanim. So even though Ketana goes from 0 to 12, the sages divided this time into 3 parts. From 6 to 10 years old, we must check a girl's intelligence. If she knows how to guard the money she received for her original consecration, and she understands what they are, that they are consecration. Not that she washes them like her toys, like a walnut or a date, I guess was those days toys. She understands what they are. These are marriage vehicles. So from age 6 to 10, if her intelligence shows that she's smart enough to understand what this is, if she wants to get out of the marriage, she has to do refusal. But between 6 and 10, if she isn't intelligent enough to guard her kiddushin money, she doesn't even need refusal. She simply leaves, goes back to her mother's house, as if she were never consecrated. Less than 6, even if she knows how to guard her money, also no need for refusal, just walk home. Once you hit 10 years old, even if she's very foolish, she always needs to have the refusal officially to leave the marriage. If a girl was married off by her brothers or her mother or her relatives without her consent, and the commentaries debate what it means without her consent, they say it basically means without telling her who the groom was. They simply married her off. She also need not formally refuse, just walks home. So there's kind of 2 levels here. Once a woman reaches majority, she needs a divorce. Before majority, she needs refusal. But even that sometimes is not needed. She can simply walk home and just the marriage dissolves by itself. Halacha ches, ketzad mimayanes, what is the formal way to go about refusal? Oimeres bifnei shnei edim, the girl needs to declare in front of two witnesses, Ein ritzayni b'pleini baili, I no longer desire so-and-so my husband. Ein ritzayni b'kiddushin shekitshuni imi oy achai, or I don't desire the consecration which my mother or my brothers have married me off into. V'chayetze b'dvar mele, or something like that. Clearly enunciating her intent of no longer desiring. Afilu hayu erchin misubin bebeis baila, even if people were just guests in her husband's home. And she's waiting on them. She's standing there and serving them. And in the middle of the meal, she says, hey, guys, I don't actually like my husband. Two witnesses. That's a good refusal. And the marriage is over. And then, those two people, in front of whom the girl had refused, they have to write a record of this refusal. And they write the following. This is the short version. We'll soon get the long version. B'yom pleini, on day X, me'ana pleinis bas pleini b'fanenu. This girl, daughter of so-and-so, declared refusal in front of us, b'pleini baila, against so-and-so, her husband. V'chaismin v'naisnin la, and they sign it and they give it to her. This is her record of her refusal. V'zehu gufay shall get meun. This is the body, the main text of what's called the meun document, the refusal document. The get meun einek get Geirushin. It's important to make the distinction. The refusal document is not like the divorce document. In the case of divorce, it's the document's handover that makes the divorce. With refusal, it's just the words that create the refusal. The document is simply a legal record. So that's a very important distinction. Plus, this refusal document doesn't need to be written with a proper intent, doesn't require being handed over in presence of witnesses, doesn't require any of the other laws that govern a divorce document. We also don't allow a scribe to write generic standard versions of this document. Like we have with the divorce, there's like 4 lines in the regular divorce that are very important. Other than that, the scribe can write a standard text and then fill those in later. That's called writing a tofes, a generic text. When it comes to mion documents, each one's got to be written at the time. We don't allow for writing in advance these standard texts. Shaba Yirah could get Geirushin because it seems like that would look like making it a full divorce, and it's not. It's only what's called a court action. It's like legal record for the court.
Who keeps the document?
The court. Well, either the court would or she would. She would. Yeah. But the point is that it doesn't have that power of effectuating something legal. The legality of it happens just when she talks. Yud. Hashnayim shemema'enes bifneim. The two witnesses in front of whom she declares refusal, tzrichin shiyu makirin isa ve'ez baila sheme'ana bay. They have to know both her and the husband who she is refusing. Lefichach, therefore, kol mi shara isa sheme'ana v'shama miyuneham. Therefore, anybody who sees a girl make a statement of miyun in the presence of 2 other people, and he hears the refusal, yesh loy lichtev get miyun la afal pi she'ein makira, he can write the divorce record for her even if he doesn't recognize her. Because the fact that he saw her say it in front of 2 witnesses, and the law is that those 2 witnesses have to know who she is, so he can assume by default that they know who she is, and he can be the scribe for this refusal. It's already become the custom among Jewish people to write the miyun document in a little bit of a more expanded text with the following nusach, the following version. Yud Aleph, Bekach v'Shabbos, this is how you write it. On this day of the week, Kach v'Kach Yom l'Chedesh Pleini, in this day and this month, Shnas Kach v'Kach l'Minyan Pleini, in this year, based on this count, either you count to creation or you count to what's called the document count, the year of Alexander the Great's death. Mi'ana Pleinis bas Pleini b'Fanenu, this girl, daughter of so-and-so, declared refusal in front of us. V'Amra, and she said, She'imi acha hituni, my brothers or my mother misled me. V'Yisiyuni kitchuni v'aniketana, and they married me off, or they consecrated me to while I was a child, Lupleni bar Pleni, to this guy, son of this guy. The hashtag Gilisi Daiti Kodamechen, and now I am revealing my intent in front of you. The Lotzavina Be, the Lakaimna Ime, I don't want him and I'm not going to stand with him. Uvedakna Plenisda, we've checked this girl, the Isbarir Lana, the Adayin Ktana, it's been clear to us that she is still a minor. Uksavna v'chasamna v'yehivnala l'schus v'leraya brura. We have written this document, we have signed it and given it to her as a acquisition and as a clear proof for her to have it in her hands. Pliny bar Pliny aid, Pliny bar Pliny aid, so-and-so and son of so-and-so, both witnesses will sign the document.
In Aramaic versus...
It's always in Aramaic, yeah.
The original didn't seem to be.
Huh?
The short one.
The original, yeah, it was just a short version in Hebrew. I tried getting a picture. I found this book. I don't know if you can see it. It's kind of a small picture. Can you see it online here? How do I show you the screen here? Here.
There we go.
This is a book. It's called Nisuei Katnut Ushtarei Get Miyun B'Yahadut Teiman. This is a book all about Yemenite Judaism. Apparently over there it was quite customary still to later times for young girls to be married. And so they have a bunch of records in there of actual miyun documents in Yemenite Judaism. So I tried getting into the book, but I could not. So I just figured I'll show you the cover. It's a cool book. At any rate, it definitely was very ancient, but it also continued in later times in certain communities. Okay, now we're going to shift gears for a minute and discuss another prohibition related to divorce, and then we're going to tie it back to refusal. Says the Rambam Malacha Yud Beis, Hamegarish es ishtoi v'niskat shel ha'acher. Okay, forget minors now. Back to regular wives. A man divorces his wife, and she gets consecrated by somebody else. Afal pi shalei ba'ala, even if that guy never had relations with her. Nesra al harishain. By virtue of the fact that she entered into a second marriage, she becomes forbidden to the first husband. V'im hechazir harishanu ba'ala, if the first guy brings her back and has relations with her, loika, he gets lashes, v'koifin es el haitzi, and we force him out. We force him to divorce her. Shanemar, as it says, lo yuchal ba'ala harishain. This is a verse, it's quite a long verse. This is talking about a case where a man is married to somebody, he divorces her, she marries somebody else. Then it says, Lo yuchal ba'ala harishan asher shilcha, the original husband which divorced her, is not able, lashuv lekachta aliyas le'isha, to take her back to be for a wife. It's a clear biblical prohibition. Halacha Yud Gimel, zinsa im acher kishehi grusha. What if she only had promiscuous relations with somebody else? It wasn't a marriage, it wasn't anything formal. When she was divorced, she simply engaged in an act of promiscuity. Muteres lachja lebaila, she can come back to her husband. Shanemar, because the verse right before this, or two verses before it, look what it says. It says, V'yotza mi beisai, v'holcha v'hoisa li'ish acher. She left the first guy's home, she went and she was to another man. The word she was implies formal marriage, havaya. Havayasa li'ish acher shehi Geirushin.
But she is married.
She was married to one guy, he divorced her. Yes. She goes to a second guy, only if the hoisa, only if she becomes his. Havayasa li'ish acher shehi Geirushin, becoming somebody else's, i.e. consecration, hisha isaras oisa al baila lachzer lei. That's the act which forbids her from later coming back to her husband. But if there was no v'haita, if there was no becoming somebody else's, it was simply promiscuous, so the prohibition doesn't apply. She can be remarried by her first husband. Halacha Yudaled u'biklal lavzeh, included in this prohibition, under this umbrella, is shekol isha shezinsa tachas baila, that if any woman commits adultery while married to her husband, nesra la v'loike aleha, she becomes forbidden to him here on out, and if there have any further relations, he gets lashes. Shanemar, because the same verse which describes the prohibition of remarriage adds three words, these three words in blue. You cannot take her back, acharei asher hu tama'a, once she has become impure or defiled. Now, that can't be referring to a woman who gets married to somebody else. Why is that defiled? If you divorce your wife, she marries somebody else, she's not defiled, she just married somebody else. So what are these extra words talking about that she became defiled? Says the Rambam, this is referring to a case where a woman who is married commits adultery. B'harei nitma, she has become defiled. The act that she became defiled while married to you now prohibits you from remarrying her, in other words, continuing to stay married. Elohim kein haisa eshes Yisrael shenensa, with one exception, the wife of a regular Jew who was raped. That's not voluntary adultery, that's very different. She can come back. But voluntary adultery automatically stops the marriage. Lefichach, therefore, kol isha shenesra al baila al yedei kinu yustira, if a woman becomes forbidden to her husband because of warning and seclusion, this is going to be the last set of laws in this book, the laws of sota. If a man tells a woman you cannot go into seclusion with another man, he gives her a clear warning, and she does, even though we don't know that she committed adultery, she's in doubt, but in a certain way, we do treat her as an adulteress. And therefore, if a woman becomes forbidden to her husband based on this warning and seclusion, in Baal Oisa, if they do have relations, Makinoise Makas Mardos, we're going to give him rabbinic lashes. It's not a biblical prohibition, but it's rabbinical. Even if a husband divorces his wife because of adultery and then remarries her, it's also forbidden. He has to divorce her again. Because once at one point the marriage was violated through adultery, there's no coming back. Tesvav. Cheresh shegeresh b'remiza. A deaf mute divorces his wife with hinting. Kamei Shabiarnos, we've explained. So it's not a real full divorce. He's able to do it. The rabbis allowed him to get out of it by asking him questions, yes, no, and if he nods in the right times, we can divorce his wife. His wife goes then and is consecrated to another deaf mute. And certainly a competent man. She can for sure not go back to her original deaf mute husband. But if a woman was married to a competent man, she gets divorced. Then gets married to a deaf mute man and gets divorced from that marriage. Fascinatingly, she can go back to the original husband because the second marriage wasn't a full marriage. Because marriage to a deaf mute is only rabbinically binding, not biblically. Now, knowing all of this, the Rambam ties it back to the main topic of this chapter. Hamima enes tezayin, a girl who gets out of a marriage by refusal, eina migureshas mimenu. She's not considered halachically to have the definition of a divorcee. And therefore, vidina im baila shemiyana boy, kedina im mishalai kitcha meyalam. The way we treat her halachically with her husband, whom she just refused, is like somebody who never had any relation to her whatsoever, as if he never consecrated her. He muteres bikrevav, v'hu muter bikreveiseha. She can marry his relatives, he can marry hers. V'loi pasla min hakahuna. The refusal doesn't disqualify her from marrying a Kohen. V'im nises la'acher. And here's the key point: if she would get married to somebody else, v'gersha ha'acher meisei mi'anabay, and that guy divorced her, or he died, or she refused him also, muteres lachazer larisha, and she can return to the first guy, because the first refusal isn't a divorce; it's only a refusal. V'lo yayit. Furthermore, I probably should have made a diagram of this, but try to follow. Ela afilu gersha harishayin. Even if the first guy divorced her, a proper divorce, v'hechazira, then he remarries her. Don't ask me why, but she's still a minor. Umianabai, and the second round she refuses. Okay, so first round she didn't have to get a divorce, but she did. She was 6 years old. She got a full divorce. Then at 7 years old, they're remarried, and she refuses the second marriage to the same guy. That's the only thing we care about. We look at the last action. The fact that the final marriage was refused, puts her in that category of not being a divorcee. And therefore, if she gets married to somebody else after that second refusal, and he divorces her, and she can return to the first husband. Even though at one point she had gotten a full divorce from him, but since the last thing we know with him and her is a refusal, if a girl leaves a marriage in a state of refusal, even if a divorce came before that, she never got a divorce ever, she can come back to him. But if the last thing we know is a divorce, if he divorces a 6-year-old child with a divorce document, and she gets married to somebody else and refuses him, she cannot come back to the first guy. Because she left him with a divorce. Even though she left the last guy only with refusal, but since she left the first guy with a get, she can never go back to him. Certainly if she got divorced from the first guy and divorced from the last guy, or he died, she cannot go back to guy number one. She can also not marry the father of the first guy, the son, the brother, no relatives, like any other divorcee. Even if she left the last marriage with refusal, the first marriage which she left with a divorce is treated like a full-on divorcee. Halacha Yud Zayin. When a girl declares refusal to a yavam, to the brother of her deceased husband, asura le'aviv, she cannot marry his father. Even though typically, again, a girl refusing can marry any of the relatives, the father not. Why? Because she was his daughter-in-law. Remember, every case of yibum means you're married to a guy, the guy dies childless, you want to marry the brother. That means they both share the same father. So if you're going to marry that father, that looks like you're marrying your father-in-law. And that's biblically prohibited. Any other relative is okay. Therefore, if she refuses one of the brothers, she can still marry the other brother. Because one brother doesn't ruin the other brother, it just ruins the father. Okay. Now we go on to the last topic of the chapter, and again we're going to soon tie it in to the refusal. Yudches, kol isha shenis almana. Any woman whose marriage ends, even an adult, divorced or widowed, she cannot get married, she can't even get consecrated. Till she waits for 90 days. Not counting the day of divorce or death, and not counting the day of consecration. 90 full days after the divorce or death before consecration. It gives us time to figure out if she's pregnant or not. To differentiate between the seed of the first husband and the second. It's very important to know who the father is. And typically, pregnancy only begins to show at 3 months.
Even if she's past childbearing age?
Oh, very good. We're going to see in a second. Yutes. When it comes to divorce, we begin the count from the day of the writing of the divorce. So here you have the scribe writing the divorce. We've learned before that a husband can write a divorce on a certain day and give his wife a divorce later. But the count begins from here. As soon as he writes the divorce, even if it was a conditional divorce, or it only reached her hand after many years, we count from the day of the writing. What's the logic there? Because we have a rule that once a husband writes a divorce for his wife, he's no longer able to enter into seclusion with her. So that means there's no possibility that he's the father after this day. So therefore, this would be just a classic case, if at day 0 she got a divorce, and at day 45 is when he gave the divorce, already at day 90 from this day, she can already get married, because for these 90 days, they were not in seclusion. Now, Dan just asked, what about a woman past childbearing age? It says that it's the sage's decree, even a woman who cannot give birth, or even if she got divorced or widowed from the state of consecration, their marriage never consummated. She must wait a full 90 days. Even a minor girl, an old woman, a barren woman, or a woman who has no physical sense of maturity. Or even if her husband is abroad, or sick, or in jail, there was no way he could be the father. And even if she's a virgin girl from a state of consecration, there was never any consummation. They must wait 90 days. This is called loy plug. We don't differentiate. We made a decree. It applies across the board. More so, says the Rambam Chaf Aleph, if a slave woman is freed, or if a woman, non-Jewish woman, converts, they also have to wait 90 days after conversion before getting married. Even if it's a man and a wife convert together, we separate them for 90 days to differentiate between seed that was impregnated in a state of holiness to seed that was impregnated not in a state of holiness. We want to know if this baby was born before or after they became Jewish. So too the woman who is called the beautiful captive. This is going to be discussed at the very end of the 14th book of the Rambam at length. But the concept is that if a soldier is at war and you see a beautiful woman, you're allowed to have relations once at war. Then if you want to have any more relations, you have to bring her home, have her converted in the whole process. Even though the Torah only prescribes 30-day wait, the sages would say she has to wait 90 days to fix the child. In other words, to know who the child is. The 30 days the Torah gives could be counted as part of the 90 days that the sages would require. Chav Beis. Now let's tie it back to our topic. If a girl leaves a marriage out of refusal, no need to wait. The sages only decreed this law in the case of a divorced woman. A woman who is promiscuous doesn't have to wait 90 days before she gets married. shleitis aber. Prostitutes were very good. They were able to guard themselves not to become pregnant. This is before birth control. They had a way. A raped girl or a girl who was seduced out of marriage doesn't have to wait because we assume they didn't become pregnant from that encounter. If a woman gets married by mistake, which means under false pretenses, it turns out that she's forbidden to her husband. They're related somehow, or some other kind of problem came up. Maybe there was a prior divorce that wasn't good. Point is, there was a marriage and a mistake. And the court did as they should, ended the marriage, took them away from each other. If she's also a child that cannot give birth, in this one case, no need to wait before the next marriage starts. This is a very uncommon thing, and things that are uncommon on the majority, the sages never decreed upon it. If somebody does consecrate a woman while she's waiting her 90 days, so we put him into excommunication. If he consecrated and then ran away, so anyway, it's not going to be a marriage here. So we don't put him into excommunication. If he actually didn't just consecrate, he actually went ahead and got married during the 90 days. That's a really big no-no. We simply separate them till after the time passes, and he can stay with his wife. Another decree of the sages. A man should not marry a woman who his friend left pregnant or nursing. So this is where you know she's pregnant. You know she's nursing. You shouldn't marry her. Even if you know who she's pregnant to, there's no issue of parental definition here. It could be that he will damage the child while having relations with her. He wouldn't care so much about his friend's child. In the case of a nursing woman, what's the problem? Maybe her milk will become ruined. And he, not being the father, won't care to take the medicinal steps that are required to heal the milk using those things that typically help this kind of milk. Because he won't help, because he won't really care.
I've heard about the ikul halal.
Yeah, the commentators talk about it. It could be that she would become pregnant with him, and that would disturb the milk production. But either way, the point is, stay away from it. Kama uzmana yenika, what is considered the time frame of nursing? 24 months. Excluding the day of consecration and the day of birth of the child. The full 24 months you should wait before marrying a woman who is nursing. The same way you cannot marry a pregnant nursing woman, you shouldn't even consecrate them till that time passes. Even if the woman hands off her son to a wet nurse, or she already weaned him during 24 months, she cannot get married till 24 months pass. Meis b'na, if the child unfortunately died, of course she can get married, and we don't have to worry that she'll actually kill her son for this reason, just to get married. Yeah. If you transgressed and you married a pregnant nursing woman during that time frame, you must divorce her, even if you were a kohen. And you won't be able to ever get remarried to her. It's too bad. If he was a regular Jew, divorce her now and bring her back after the months of nursing are over. If he consummated the marriage and then ran away, and after the time passed, he comes back and stays with his wife. No big deal. No need for a divorce. If somebody simply consecrated a pregnant or nursing woman, we don't force them to go to separate the marriage. Rather, just we don't let him consummate the marriage till after the time frame passes for nursing, or until unfortunately the baby will die, in which case there will be no issue, and then they can go forth with the marriage.